really a question of, do you do the same old political battles about who's going to fight what, or do you just get on with it and let's deal with this as if it's a real emergency?
So, welcome to Pizza and Politics, a video series where we discuss politics, civics, and government with state politicians. Today, we have an interview with Dave Cortese, a former vice mayor of the city of San Jose and a former member of the board of Santa Clara Supervisors. He is also currently the state senator for California's 15th district. We are so honored to welcome Senator Dave Cortese today.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we don't have pizza because that's not possible, but we just wanted to start off and ask you, what is your opinion on pineapple on pizza?
Family is Italian, actually from Sicily, and I think they have pineapple on pizza there now because everybody tries that all over the world, but I don't think it was part of the original pizza heritage. I don't think so. I'm not a big fan. I love pineapple fresh. I'm not a big fan of putting it on a pizza and heating it up. Sorry to say.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that one. I can never understand fruit on pizza. But moving back into the more politics of it, can you talk about where you were from, your education, and what pushed you to get into public service to begin with?
I grew up in a San Jose that was much different. And it was very agricultural then. And it seems now like such a distant memory in so many ways, but I can visualize it and remember it literally just like it was yesterday if I close my eyes. But I grew up in a farm that would almost look like a Midwest farm, but it was here in Evergreen where, as you all know, I didn't live that far from, I lived about halfway between where Evergreen Valley High School is and Silver Creek High School are, if you know the area. And it was just maybe 9 houses in that whole area. And the place I lived had, chickens and goats and cows and, all kinds of things. And a lot of nature around us, and then orchard farming. That's what we did. So as a kid, I got interested in politics because some of the migrant farm workers that worked with us, we all worked literally now people say in the fields, but it was really in the orchards. And with one particular family, the Gonzalez family, and 2 of the boys that were a little bit older than me got drafted. They wanted citizenship really badly. They got it. And then as soon as they got it, they got drafted to go to the Vietnam War. And one of them was killed on the front lines right away. And I wrote a letter to my congressman, and he I wrote him a letter complaining about this whole situation with the war and the draft and losing my best friends. And he wrote me back a personal letter, and it really kind of changed my life because I realized, there are actually people who are elected in public office who care enough, to write a letter to a kid, in a prune orchard out in the middle of nowhere. And
moving on, currently there is a lot of focus on national politics and what happens on the national stage. Obviously, it is very important to keep up the national politics, but why do you think people should also focus on what happens on the state level as well?
Well, because in this state, we tend to lead the nation at times. This is the 5th largest economy in the world, and because it drives the American economy, even though there's 49 other states. Just to put it in perspective, of all federal tax dollars that get sent to the federal government by residents here, all residents, by the way, right? Whether you're documented or undocumented, you're paying taxes, income taxes, and they're taking it right out of your check. 1 out of every $6 that goes to the federal government comes from California. Not 1 out of every $50, right? There's 50 states, 1 out of every 6. So we have a huge role to play here. There's only 40 senators for the whole state, representing 40 million people in the upper house of our legislature. So it's a pretty significant position. And I think it's really important for us to push, what may look like the cutting edge, or, pushing a little beyond maybe where the Congress is able to go, because the country as a whole, as you know, it's not all like California, but the Congress has a harder time, for example, sometimes, for example, passing really significant climate legislation. We want them to, and many of them want to do it, but it's difficult. They have a very kind of a 50-50 situation in the Senate right now. So one vote could torpedo the whole thing. Here in California, we have a strong Democratic majority in both houses, and we can get on really on the national stage and the global stage and set a great example for people beyond the nation, especially on issues like climate or other issues that have global implications like immigration and other issues. I think we just have to be leaders here.
Yeah, that's totally awesome. And I totally agree that, you know, we don't really realize how significant California is just on like a national stage generally. So moving on to more of like what happens in our district. As you know, our state Senate district is one of the wealthiest in California and encompasses some of the wealthiest cities in the country and the world. But with that, we still see an increasing number of homeless citizens. How do you think we can tackle this issue, and what are you currently doing to address it?
You know, I was invited by the Senate Pro Tem to join a leadership group that already existed before I got here. So I'm very honored because as a new person, they invited me into this little group that is going to be pursuing major housing legislation. And part of that is something that we anticipate is going to be called SB 5, Senate Bill 5, which will create a statewide bond. It'll bond a bond that is essentially a borrowing of, you know, multi-billion dollars by the state in order to then distribute that money back to the cities and counties to provide extremely low-income housing, which will help the homeless and others. So I'm going to get in that group, and I'm going to argue vociferously that, you know, that money really needs to go to that extremely low income category. It needs to help homeless people first because they're literally unsheltered right now, 10,000 unsheltered approximately in Santa Clara County alone. And up and down the state, it's all over. It's not just in certain places. You know, Solano County by Fairfield or Vacaville, I mean, they have 2,500 unsheltered people in that county, homeless in tents and such. So, you know, we have 4 or 5 crises going on right now in this state, and some of them are nationwide, as you know, justice and others. But the homelessness crisis here in California is one of those top, I would call it top 5 crises that needs to be addressed because it's inflicting enormous human pain and suffering right now. And it's really unacceptable. To your point, we have more per capita millionaires and billionaires than any county, you know, in our district. Than probably in our Senate district is probably essentially leading the whole nation in terms of per capita millionaires and billionaires. And we haven't quite figured out how to get some of that corporate wealth, which is another formula locally, which really needs to be pursued, into the hands of the people that can build those shelters and housing.
And so I think that was a great answer. This issue is like a very emotional one for a lot of people. But another voting issue, especially for young people, is the response to the climate crisis. A poll released by Harvard's Institute of Politics found that 83% of young Democrats and 50% of young Republicans believe that the government should do more when dealing with the environment. So how are you going to ensure confidence from your younger constituents and citizens across California in the state's response to this crisis?
You know, the very first day I was sworn in on December 7th, I introduced 3 bills in their SB 30, 31, and 32. They all call for broad sweeping change in how we construct our buildings, how the cities apply rules for decarbonization on homes and buildings that are built in each city jurisdiction. And, you know, it also sets some standards for changing even the statewide building codes and buildings that the state itself is going to be building to make sure that they're free of natural gas and they're either carbon neutral or carbon negative. I was a county supervisor until midnight, December 5th. I didn't become a senator until the morning of December 7th. 2 days later, And I immediately introduced those 3 bills. So I'm serious. Right after this call, I am invited to a Zoom with about 12 other legislators, most of them in the Senate, who are also introducing a variety of other climate bills. I've never seen this many or this much action before, so please be reassured about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the climate crisis is something that's super important. So our final question is that we really appreciate you obviously taking the time out of your extremely busy schedule to talk with us. So why do you think that high school students should take the time out of their busy schedules to engage with the government in general?
You know, I just think it's huge. I think election day, even if it's never turned into a holiday, it should feel like a holiday. I mean, we might not need that anymore. When I was growing up, we only actually had one day for election day. Unless you were military or something, you didn't get an absentee ballot or mail-in ballot. Now, really, it's like election month, right? You vote. The voting is rolling for about 30 days. But it should feel special to people. It should feel as, if I know people who get really into saluting the flag or hearing, you know, God bless America sung, or, they just love their neighborhood. They just, love the melting pot, if you will, of America, or whatever you want to call that now, the diversity, the multiculturalism. But it's a feeling they have. All these things are feelings, And I just think that what you're doing, it will instill a feeling for you for the rest of your lives that politics is really important. It's important to be engaged. It's important to vote. And you're laying the foundation for yourselves now. I had that little extra blessing of, being a teenager when my father ran for office. Remember, I said I had a role model in the house. So it hyped up everything. It made elections and politics all of a sudden seem like something noble and glorious, Somehow, I think it's up to organized groups like you, Pizza and Politics, to sort of, you kind of have that, to kind of spread it to the rest of the generation as much as you possibly can. And let's try to get that back for America. I think as many mistakes as America made over the years, racism, slavery, injustice, denying women the right to vote, the one thing about America that is precious is that early America made this idea of voting and participatory democracy something very special. It was special. Granted, it was a white privilege special, but we should learn from that and make it now as special as it was for the white privileged folks, but let's make it that special for everyone now.